All right, so we are recording. Guys, my name is Thomas Bresch. Most of you know that, but if you don't, my name is Thomas Bresch, and I make indie games for a living. And so does my buddy here, Aaron. Aaron, how you doing, man? Tell us a little about yourself, about your studio, about your game.
Sure. Hey guys, I'm Aaron Gwynaire, and I run the one-man team, Defy Reality Entertainment. And I've been making a point-and-click adventure game called Neara since 2018, and I haven't looked back since. It's still heavily into production. It's very Myst style. The original Myst and Riven games that came out in the 90s runs in the same way, screen to screen, point-and-click. And yeah, that's what I do. I do everything, and I'm gonna be talking about signing a deal, a publishing deal, and the different jobs that I do as a solo game developer.
Sweet. I mean, it's so cool being able to talk to people like you because it's cool that people are doing what I'm doing, which is you sign deals and then you make games full time. You work with publishers, you get funded, and you're making your game, full time before you even finish your game, which is just super cool. So we're gonna talk all about that. We'll also talk about world building and puzzle design if you want to, Aaron. I know you're into that. And also like pre-rendering, real-time graphics, all that. So there's going to be some technical aspects of this podcast, guys, and then there's also going to be funding aspects. And I know a lot of you are interested on how do you get funding. Me and Aaron, we're not like some like superhero people. We're normal dudes, and we found funding, and you guys can too. All right, Aaron, I'm going to run an intro here, and then I'll see you on the other side.
Awesome.
By the way, guys, feel free to download my free 2D game kit below. It's totally free. It's my treat to you. I used this exact 2D game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and then I got to play it in front of his subscribers, which was really awesome. So download that. Use it however you want. It's my treat to you. Yeah. Okay. So let's go ahead and chat really quick about this beautiful, beautiful game. Can you give us an idea really quick of what it's built in, what you're using software-wise?
Yeah, sure. So Neara uses Blender. It uses Blender as the main 3D modeling tool for the game art, for everything that you're seeing. I also use Photoshop.
Is that Maya? Are you saying Maya? What are you saying?
Blender.
Oh, why did I think your game is called Nia?
Nia.
Okay,
Yeah.
I thought you said Maya. Nia is the game, and then you're using Blender. Sweet.
Yeah. Everything is modeled in Blender, and then basically I render images from the world, and then these are edited in Photoshop. And the lighting, everything, the textures are all, they're brought to life more. And then I bring that into Visionaire Studio 5, which is a great engine for point-and-click games. I was using an engine before that called Adventure Maker, but when I started getting back into game development, it wasn't supported anymore. So Visionaire was a great tool that was suggested to me by a French game developer who's making kind of similar Myst style games.
Yeah.
And so yeah, everything's pre-rendered. It's not real time, which is interesting because it's like a cross between 2D and 3D. Even though I'm creating 3D environments,
Yeah.
they're brought to the surface, the actual game, as in 2D format, as actual images. So you actually click through the environment, and yeah, these when you're moving through, you can actually change the transitions as well. So you can kind of fade between the images. You can disable them as well, and you might see a bit of what's called journey mode, which is interesting because the game's in development. You're seeing the build as it currently stands, and so you suddenly see these animations where there's no textures and it's all kind of like blocks of color, and that's the actual viewport OpenGL format from Blender. And these are kind of quick animations that have been kind of rendered out, brought into the engine, and so then I can see how they perform within the build.
So,
Yeah.
quick question for you. Why would we? I guess games like Resident Evil, right? I think about Resident Evil that did this. The old like OG first Resident Evil, or at least the one on like GameCube. That was the one that I played.
Yeah.
I understand the technical reason why you would do that in that old hardware, but what's the reasoning behind not just rendering it in Unity without creating these images?
Yeah, there's a couple of reasons behind that, and they're kind of personal reasons, really. I'm no programmer. I tried programming when I was younger, in my teens, and that's when I got into game development, sort of mid 2000s.
Yeah.
I'm 30 now, soon to be 31, and it was kind of, I knew that with this pre-rendered point-and-click style, especially with Adventure Maker back in the day, you didn't need much programming at all. It was very sort of visually scripting, kind of like you're creating boxes and you're setting action parts into those boxes to fade to an image, to create a sound, a certain condition. And so for me, that just worked. It worked really well. Also, I love the pre-rendered graphics as opposed to what you can achieve in even Unreal 4, not so much Unreal Engine 5, Unreal Engine 4, should I say. The fidelity and the clarity and the realism that's captured within Cycle's rendering engine within Blender.
Yeah.
It's just like when I started getting into Blender, which was 2018 as well, by the way.
Wow.
I was using software. Yeah, I was using a software called Animator before that when I was in my teens. That's what got me into 3D modeling. So I already had a really nice sort of background in 3D modeling.
Yeah.
And I thought Cycle's rendering engine come to life with this little test I was doing. So wow, these graphics, they remind me of Riven, the 1997 Cyan game, which is a massive inspiration to Neara, and that runs in the same way, point and click. And I was just like, wow, this is great. This is what I need to use. I need to use Blender to create this game, and it's just the shadows and everything, and so that works for me. And I kind of think it's doing what they did back in the day and taking that charm that I think those games had, the soul, and you take that away, in my opinion, and you make that a real-time game like they've done with Myst. They re-released Myst in last year. And don't get me wrong, it's a wonderful game. But when you take that kind of point and click pre-rendered touch away, for me personally, and I think I understand it's also the viewpoint of a few other people that are in the sort of Neara community that are following the game, it kind of takes something away as well. And I think it's one of the big draws to Neara, is that it's bringing that back. And especially with the the people who are into the Myst games, it's kind of almost retro and old school, but it's refreshing. And I think that's really cool to bring that into like sort of like younger generations that haven't really sort of experienced that kind of gameplay before, and I think that makes it quite unique. In a lot of as well.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm seeing some 3D aspects, like you just went up a 3D elevator and stuff.
Yeah. So that's
can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. That's like actual animations rendered in Blender. So
wow.
Yeah, so it's all rendered in Blender. I actually run two computers. I run this one here that I'm on at the moment for modeling and Gwynaire and Photoshop and all other stuff like documentation and whatever I do, and eventually music as well, and sound design. And then this one over here that I have over here renders everything. So I'm actually rendering quite a big animation at the moment. So that renders all the time. That's always rendering, whether it's scenes for the game or animations.
Yeah.
So it's on the go, and this computer is also rendering stuff in the background usually as well. So it's one of the kind of cons against real pre-rendered, is that it's time consuming. When you've got Unreal, and I've never used the engine, but what I've seen of it is that you can pretty much, from what I gather, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can throw things in and instantly get like everything's rendered in real time. So you don't have to wait for frames to come in. And you'd have to throw them into the engine and
Yeah.
put them together. So it's you'd have to wait for things to render. Like I mean, I've got two very fast computers, so they render very fast, but it's the amount of renders.
Yeah.
Neo is going to be a very big world.
Right.
What you're seeing in this video is just a fraction, a portion of the entire world. So yeah,
That's so cool. Yeah, like I think you could probably accomplish a similar look that I'm seeing here in Unreal or like Unity. But you're right, like there's this sort of OG community that crave these classic games. The problem is, you're creating this, you're basically promising to your market and to your publisher, and we'll talk about that in a second, that you're creating this classic game. Like that in a way that's the marketing feature, right? That's the hook, which is this is classic and we're not really going to stray from that. Is that sort of your mentality?
Definitely. A great thing with Nia is that it does have so many marketing hooks, which I've discussed and been kind of informed about with the marketing team from my publisher too. I think the peculiarity, the fact that it's such a peculiar game in that sense, because it's the way it's presented, the way it's created. And I guess that is, I definitely, have seen as well, particularly with Unreal Engine 5. I mean, it's insane what that engine is going to be able to achieve for game developers. But even then, that would be the only engine, I think, that particular engine would be the engine that would sway me to kind of real time.
Right.
I think it's basically like if you look at stills, even from a game that is made in a real time engine, there's always this element of sometimes, I guess, depending on what kind of art style you're going for, whether it's stylized or very photorealistic, there's always this kind of plasticky kind of look to things sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think even with when you're getting a camera close to like in a real time game, it gets close to an object, you can see those kind of edges of things. You can see, if you're running a really fast computer like I do, and you're able to add all those polygons and all that detail and render it in a path traced, ray traced engine, you're going to get this because it's recreating how sunlight actually reacts to things in the real world. So you're going to have this instead of rasterization, which is used more, I think, in like a real-time engine, you're going to have more this clarity to things. But I think you're right. I mean, you can probably create very similar looks, and if you're doing something with Unreal or Unity, you can do it in Unreal and Unity if you want, if you know those engines, and if you can program. I admire anyone who can program, right? Like who can really do that work. Because I wish my brain was a bit more kind of targeted in that way, but I'm just so visual, and I'm all about story. I'm all about the artwork, the everything in those regards.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same way. I'm the exact same way, and I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but like super insecure that you're only really gifted in these areas, and you feel like it's such a limiting factor with your games. And like for me, I always feel, man, there's no way that I can compete with these like hyper successful indie games, like Hollow Knight, or even Cuphead. Cuphead, regardless of its look, it's got really good mechanics, meaning it's coded really well and it's really, really fine-tuned and precise. I always feel really insecure about that, and it's so funny for me, and I want to sort of segue this into publishers. It's so funny for me because publishers apparently are really, and I say apparently because I've just been shopping around a couple of my games, they're really hungry for these classic games. They're really hungry for classic games that have a very distinct look and flavor. And was that true for you when you started shopping this with publishers?
Well, for me, kind of backtracking a bit as well, what you said with kind of feeling insecure about creating a game that maybe you feel like you're taking inspiration from a games, but you think, oh wow, that's such a big game. I think for me, it's it's weird, but the overwhelming side of it never really occurred to me. I think it came down to certain things that were happening in my personal life that I thought, I need to focus on the process over outcome with this. Because I had a music background, and so things weren't, they were going like well, but it wasn't, I wasn't achieving what I really wanted to achieve out of it.
What were you doing musically?
What do I do musically?
Yeah, what were you doing?
I was a singer-songwriter, so I was performing
Awesome.
my own songs. I was writing, singing, playing guitar. I was recording music. I was teaching music as well. We had me and my wife. We had a music tuition business in Western Australia
Nice.
called Defy Reality Music Tuition. And so I was doing a lot with music in my 20s. And but it's the size of the game that I wanted to create with Neara really I didn't feel like I was inadequate. It was kind of like the fact that I just wanted to create a world. I think that's the biggest thing for me. It's the draw. I kind of forget about the other things, and because Neo is it is about the world. It's about the world foremost, as opposed to say mechanics and things that are very sort of like, you can add complicated things. It's about exploring the world through a very simple point and click system.
Yeah.
It was more about being in that world and feeling really immersed myself and feeling like I was actually in it.
So that led to you not feeling insecure, like you feeling like
It's like I was immersed myself. I was just
that's great.
I was in my element, and I focused on my element. I focused on the things that I was, which you've talked about, I believe in your other videos as well.
Yeah.
Focusing on your strengths, and you do learn things along the way, though. Even the strengths that you have, you realize, wow, there's so much still to learn. And when you're building a game like Neara, which started in 2018, that's a long time, a long period of development, and also being committed to a game. You have to have something behind you to be able to not quit.
Yeah.
And I think it's that process over outcome. If you really focus on that more than what you're gonna, what but this happens, what if this happens, and the worries that might happen, you need to focus on what you're really enjoying, and the enjoyment and the passion and the drive. And
Well, did you not feel that? Did you not feel that flow state when you were doing music? Did you not feel like you were in your element with music?
Interestingly enough, I was. I mean, I love performing. I love, I love writing songs, and I think maybe, being able to like talk through things with my wife as well. It was coming from a more of like an ego based place, and it was unhealthy. It was toxic, and I think
I've been there.
It can happen, not to everyone, but if you start falling into that whole ego trip thing, it's just you're not on a great path.
Yeah.
And I think the great thing about the game development, and this is like, I'll show an example here. And this is a blue diary book that I wrote in my teens that I still have, and it's like my process of getting into game development.
Oh, I love
And
that.
I still have this. And I remember my wife reading this back in, when around the time I sort of first got to know her. It was about 2015, I believe, 2016. And she read it and she realized this is what I was supposed to be doing, like game development. This is where my soul was really into things.
Yeah. So in a weird way, you can let go of your ego with game development for some reason. Is it because it's not perceived as cool?
I think it's because it's coming from deeper within me. It's coming from more of my heart and my soul, and it's kind of like I was saying about creating a world.
Yeah.
You're developing a world that you're not focusing on yourself. You're not in the spotlight. You're not on stage. Everyone's focusing on the game that you're creating, and I like that. I think it was really good for me to do that, and I think that's why the game has come about. So it has built the way it has and grown the way it has and developed the way it has, and I think that's one of the driving forces behind it.
Yeah.
And it's been a very good very wonderful journey because of that.
I think that's great. I really do. It's I've been in this weird place mentally for the past 2 years where like my studio is starting to become more of a business, and there's, I just got done with a meeting with an advisor to help me, understand, how to grow revenue and all that. You start to focus on that. But then I'm like, well, do I want to do that? Like, do I want that? Like,
Yeah.
Probably not. And so there's another side of me, half of me, that's like, no, I want to make great games. Like, I just want to make what I want to make.
Yeah.
And that led me to make Father, which is like similar to you in the sense that I was inspired by classic shooters. Yes. I love classic shooters. And it's funny because half of me thought, well, who wants that anymore? What publisher, what investor is going to want to invest in that? And I just sort of put it aside for a little bit.
Yeah.
A couple months of just like, we'll see. But I got really insecure about it because it was what I loved, but I didn't think it was marketable. But what this call is sort of helping me understand is like, if you love something, there's probably a market for it somewhere. And that's true for you. You found a publisher.
Yeah, I did. I found a publisher. Or they found me. Because
it happens that way sometimes.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I had certain things in place if I wanted to find one. I was gathering. I had about, before I signed a contract, I had about 2,500 wish lists that I'd gathered myself. Unpaid marketing. It was basically from Facebook posts I was doing in groups and stuff. This is how I gained my community, and a couple of Reddit posts and stuff like that. But it's mainly Facebook. And then it was 2020, around November 2020, that the CEO of Microprose, David Leggetti, he contacted me. And, I didn't really know who he was, and I didn't really know too much about Microprose either. But, looking back in their history, they were a huge publisher back in the day. They sort of like the 80s, releasing games like Civilization and the different tycoon games, Railroad Tycoon, I believe it was called, and Darklands. So a lot of sort of simulation kind of games, but they also had a catalog of various different other kinds of games as well.
Yeah,
which is quite interesting because Neara is, a point-and-click adventure game, and very sort of different to even the games they're sort of like releasing currently as well. So, I was contacted by David from Microprose, and the one thing that was offered to me was full-time. You can go full-time and make this game. I was like, that was the big light bulb for me.
For sure.
That was like, oh my god, like, wow. There were other situations where funding, like in Australia, I nearly had some funding, but then circumstances happened, and I came back to England.
Yeah.
And it was something I thought might happen. Maybe funding will happen, but I was in my element again. I was just making the game. I had no deadlines either. I was just like, I'm just gonna create this world. I'm just gonna, and I had this community building, and it was 2000. Around the time Microprose contacted me was when I was having these spikes of wish lists, and I think certain things were happening where I was kind of improving things in Photoshop, and then I was kind of pushing the game a bit further graphically, and it was just an amazing time. I even had an offer from Infinity Ward.
No way.
The Call of Duty games, and I don't know much about those games at all, to be honest. So I had to kind of look into it. I was like, oh wow, okay. And I was like, yeah. So I actually turned that down. I was like, they said, if you're going to have an interview, you can talk to some of the artists, and if you get the job, you can come over to LA and work in our studio. Like, it was quite cool. But then I was just like, in my head, I was like, I've got this game. I've been into this game now for, well, by then it was over 2 years.
Yeah.
and had so much work to do. And it's just like that was where my passions were. So this is a really interesting thing of like people that get into game development. They want to work in the studio. They want to, get into the job. The great thing about game development is you can get away from that kind of grind or the mentality of being into of working at an office job, and you can, especially in the day and age we live in now. I mean, Thomas, yourself, you're like, you bring to the forefront the reality of what we can do now as game developers, how we can inspire others, and how people can it's wonderful. You never had that back in the day, and I chose to sign with Microprose, and that was it's been wonderful ever since.
So they just reached out to you and they were like, hey, you want some money? We want to publish the game.
Yeah. They pay me a full-time salary that I worked out, and we did, we agreed upon.
Yep.
It's a monthly salary as well. It's paid monthly.
Yeah.
Which is wonderful. It works out really well for me, and I've got Patreon as well, so that helps out too. And
do you have a YouTube channel, by the way?
I do. Some of the video that you're watching now is kind of like devlog.
Guys, be sure to click the link below to check out Aaron's channel, and also there's links to your Patreon below as well. That's so cool. Yeah. So it's pretty funny how your story mirrors mine, because we're both making classic games. Father's straight up classic first person shooter with like it's more stylized. It looks a little bit more modern, but
it's very different games.
But they're classic, and like it was so funny because I got same thing happened to me. I can't disclose too much, but a publisher reached out to me, and they're one of those classic 90s studios. They're still around. They've got funding, and they're like, hey, we'd love to release a game that's just like all our other games. And I find that really interesting, mainly because I thought that wasn't a thing. Like, I thought everyone was supposed to make sandbox games now, or multiplayer games. But we can still make these classic games, which kind of gives me chills in a weird way, because it's just like, oh, could I make classic games for the rest of my life? Because I just love replicating my childhood. It's so fun. Yeah. But more importantly, here's what's cool. These companies, these studios, they know how to market these games because that's their MO. Like, they've been doing this since the 90s. But I don't know, what was the company again that's publishing your game?
Microprose.
Yeah, I didn't. When did they start doing their games?
I believe it was the early 80s.
That's crazy. So they know how to market this thing. If it's $1 million game, they're gonna make it happen, right? They know what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, there were so many things that I discussed with David about Neara, and he saw something that was quite different. He was looking as well at how, with the Myst, like Myst is a big series of games. Myst originally came out in 1993. Mm-hmm. The sequel Riven came out in 1997, and that's the biggest inspiration for Neara. I just love that game. For the time, it was graphically just, amazing what they could achieve. They were using the same software they used for Jurassic Park, because they had a huge... Their sales of Myst, it was the best-selling game till 2001. Wow! Until Sims took it over, and so they used their funds to be able to fund Riven as well. So it was a huge budget. And it's like, I'm taking on a game that's on the same scale as Riven, and I'm doing it by myself. Like, I've had people say to me, like, "Why are you taking on such an ambitious project all by yourself for your first game?" Yeah. And again, it comes down to the passion and the drive you've got for it. Don't try not to think about all the other stuff. You have to set yourself milestones, because that helps you actually get the game done. Something that you definitely talk about as well, Thomas.
I'm learning that now for myself. Even I still struggle with it.
It's one thing. I think you just have to think, well, you do have to get the game done. You have to finish it at some point. And I think without the publisher, I could have spent another 10 years making this game if I wanted to. But at the end of the day, right, you want to. And it's something I've learned from you as well, is you want to create, this is what a career that you want to build, you want to create this career for yourself. Well, you've got to finish it at some point.
Yeah.
And at the same time, it's creating that balance of being able to enjoy the process, because I've never released a game. This is my first game.
Yeah.
I've tried games in the past. They're more kind of like, there were games that I was starting and creating the 3D worlds, but then music I always used to take over in my teens. And then I had a game in 2011 that I was making called Portals, Journey to the Pearl Islands, and that backstory that I created for that actually is now used for Neara.
I love that.
So I had this huge backstory that I fleshed out more. And so yeah, it's you just you kind of just you go with it, and you try not to think about what other people are doing too much too. I think that helps.
Well, I can imagine if you, like, for example, Reddit, like if you were to post something like this on Reddit, which you have, I could be wrong here, but I'm just using my own personal experience with Reddit. You're going to get backlash, perhaps, in one regard, people saying it's not OG enough. Like, why Myst was this way, why isn't it like that? And then maybe you'll get people backlash saying, why are we still making games like this? Why is it made out of just pictures? Was that some backlash you got?
That happens, the whole backlash of like, why are you doing this in real time? That is a common thing.
Yeah.
And there are so many reasons for that. There are personal reasons for that. I love the way that Myst and Rhythm were made.
Yeah.
So for me, it's copying that kind of principle in that sense, but it's also the way that I prefer the fidelity, especially with cycles rendering in Blender, how it creates such a photorealistic look.
Yeah.
But the backlash with Reddit, it's an interesting one. Reddit did pretty well at one point. I actually got a massive spike in wishlists when I first started with Reddit, and it's interesting because I target the indie game dev pages and stuff.
Yep.
But it's also the Myst community, and so when you're targeting the Myst community in Reddit, it's like bam.
Brilliant.
It's actually really interesting how it works. For me, I think it's the fact that you post too much, and then people, that's where the backlash can be. I found that maybe posting a lot of the same thing it wears on people.
Yeah.
So you kind of spice it up, and it becomes like people think it's too spammy what you're doing. It's like, but interestingly enough, there's always an audience that you're targeting. So you might be on a page that I've been like, PC Master Race has actually done really well as a page on Facebook that I'm part of, and it's like the community there just love the game. And these are people that probably don't even play Myst or point-and-click pre-rendered style games, but they just love the way it looks. And it's interesting how it actually converts people. It's like, I'm sure it's converted people before, in the sense that, like, I don't usually play this style of game, but wow, I love this world that you've created. And that's an example of how game art is so important as well. And you probably very aware of this yourself, but like the way the game presents itself,
there's two things that I can take from what I'm looking at right now in terms of marketability, and I love marketing.
Yes,
First one is, it looks incredible. You're a master. Like, I'm impressed. But the second, so the look and feel, and that, again, correct. Like for me, look and feel with my games, with Never Sung and Pinstripe, that was the selling feature with Kickstarter, that was the selling feature with publishers, that was the selling feature with the actual platforms. So look and feel is so important. But also, what's important from a marketing perspective is, I don't know if this is the right term, but something like trend jacking, which is taking something that's popular and then putting your own spin on it. This is so great to do right now. I mean, we're so lucky that what are we, 30 years, 40 years into the game industry? So why are we reinventing stuff, especially in the indie game market? Like, we need to stop reinventing stuff. Like, you can create your own twist, but there's no reason to reinvent something when you have a $150,000 budget. Like, that's not the time to reinvent something. That's the time to take something that's already working and use it to your advantage and use it as a marketing tool. So for example, my game is just like Myst, or I was inspired by Myst, I played it when I was 15, that kind of thing, you know?
Exactly right. And interesting you said about like it's not as like old school as Myst. There hasn't really been too much sort of backlash about that really. It's kind of, it's just instantly like Myst. Everyone's like, oh wow, I could see the inspiration here, like
Yeah.
the Myst vibes. It's been I've been quite lucky in the sense that I've had a lot of positive responses, which has been really good. The feedback I've got maybe from certain gifts of gameplay is like maybe there's too many clicks to get to a certain position. And if that crops up, this is another thing about feedback, which I've experienced. If you get feedback that kind of keeps cropping up and you get the repeated kind of thing, then that's something to look into,
Yeah.
which I've improved on. And I've seen it now. It's just like, wow, that's really improved the game. And I suppose the added twist to this game, as opposed to like Myst and how it played and Riven, and even Myst 3 Exile and the other Myst games, is that it has like an inventory as well. And you actually use your inventory within the game. You pick up items, and I think that adds a bit of an extra kind of that point and click classic,
Yeah.
Broken Sword, Longest Journey, Monkey Island, those classic point and click games. It brings that into the game too. So you're kind of mixing the two together. Near has a bit more of a sci-fi feel. It includes more FMV footage, so you're seeing there like that's actually an option in the game, which I'm setting as kind of like a default currently, but I am in two minds about that at the moment. Where when you go up a staircase or you go up some ladder or down a ladder or transition into a particular scene, you actually see yourself moving through it. It's a pre-rendered FMV sequence, and that
Right.
adds an extra element of kind of immersion into what is otherwise a point and click
Yeah.
static.
Was that something that these OG games did? They would have that sort of video that would take them up a ladder?
Well, Riven and Myst never did that. They only had the animations of you being in like a cart, for example, which Near will have as well. It'll have some really cool kind of things like that.
Yeah.
But it came from my inspirations from games like Dragon Lore 2, Heart of the Dragon Man, and Schism, which were kind of Dragon Lore 2 was released in 1996, and Schism was more of, I think, sort of end of the 90s, maybe 98. I think it might have come out in 98 actually. Yeah. So yeah, end of the 90s. But it was it had more of the literally, instead of clicking to go forward, you would watch an FMV of you moving forward wherever you were. If you clicked right, it would turn. You would turn. It was like real time,
Oh.
but pre-rendered. It was really interesting, and I found that really cool. So I thought, well, I'm going to incorporate that, but I'm making a really big game. It's only me doing it. I don't have time to create animations of you moving forward at every
Oh, I
position.
know, dude.
So
I'm
it's
looking at
something-
this. How is there other than you saying I'm gonna move the camera around and take pictures in Blender? Is there a way in which you can automate it so that it sort of goes down a track and it just takes pictures of all four angles without you having to do each position? Like, how are you taking these pictures?
Yeah, yeah. The closest thing you can get to is basically copy and pasting your node positions. So yeah, every position is like a node, and it consists of A, B, C, and D, or maybe A lookup, because
Yeah.
you can look up in the game too, and look down,
Right.
and zoom in on things as well. So you got to cater for those things, and each angle might be different. So you might, for going up a particular like rock surface to see a ladder, well, that camera has to be tilted up, a bit more, and it's perspective. So actually, when you're moving forward, the camera is actually tilted down slightly to see more of the walkway. It's never completely straight. It gives the illusion of you moving forward. This is kind of stuff that I've kind of learned from. There's a really cool book from Mr. Riven. It sits up there. Gives some really cool insights on how they made those games and the kind of tricks of the trade that they use. And it's like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Because I use a 3D model of a human, which is his name is Evlia, and he won a special offer that I was doing. That was one of the prizes he won. to name this 3D model.
Nice.
So you call them Evlia.
Yeah.
And it means, I believe it means traveler, but not too sure about that one. I'll have to look into that. But yeah, so basically I use this Evlia character. It has nothing to do with the game, and it's a scaling model. So the camera is set at head height, and whenever I render those scenes, everything is then consistent. So you're not kind of
I
going
love
from
that.
whoop, down there and up here and moving around when you always, if you're moving forward, you need to keep that camera pretty straight, because I've seen it in problems I've come up with. I still need to rectify some.
Yeah. Is
The
this
camera
world,
side-
is it all one file in Blender? Like, let's say, I'm looking at it right now, you can't see it, but it's just this sort of water world with a bunch of pipes. And you're sort of on the surface of the ocean. Is this
Yeah.
all one world in Blender?
It's the interesting thing about, like, you could see it on my screen right here, and I've minimized everything I'm working on in Blender. The world is basically a selection of scenes that I model separately, then bring into one big scene.
Wow.
I think that one of the scenes consists of like maybe about 80,000 polys. You're talking about really big, detailed scenes. And so when this is not something I kind of learned at the beginning, but I learned along the way to keep render times down. You can break these scenes down by using cliffs and stuff like that to break a bigger scene down, by then just keeping it restrained into a small area. So the render times are faster. You can render things quicker. But in reality, it's the illusion is it feels like a whole world, right? You're moving through, you're clicking through. It's all separate scenes, all separate files, and it's a logistical. I wouldn't say it's a logistical nightmare.
I was going to
Like,
say.
I'm a very organized person. I love you talk about documentation. I'm about
Yeah.
documentation.
I talk about it. I'm not good at it, but but I talk about it.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, a game like this, you need
Oh, I
documents.
can't imagine. Like, especially
There's-
labeling scenes, labeling angles. all of
Yeah,
that.
definitely. There's I think a 30-page document I have for one island of the game, and it's just like I describe myself going through it. I literally describe myself going through the scene. It keeps everything like a narrative almost, and then I can pull when I'm eventually ready to design that world. I can like I've got it's like 4 books here of sketchworks and notes of the game. Just shows various different things of different worlds I need to create, the
Man.
different separate models and what they do, how they're incorporated into the game. So it's not just documentation on Word; it's also keeping things in a sketch format. So then I can bring that sort of concept art and bring it into Blender. But the thing about using concept art, I find, is that you never keep to the original. It always changes. You have a sketch, and it's like you bring it in. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this now. And I think one of the things you've touched upon as well is you need to be your own producer, right? You need to wear all these different hats, which you know about.
Yep.
It's just you have to kind of tell yourself you need to stop this and move on to the next thing now.
I know.
You've
I know.
got something
So you're a
here.
perfectionist.
Oh yeah, I'm a massive perfectionist.
Have you always been that way?
Yeah, I think I have. I've actually got where is it? I mean, a picture of me here, just like doing my sketching when I was like a little kid.
Oh,
I've
nice.
always been into it. It's something I've always wanted to do. I've always been into painting, drawing. I wrote a 264-page manuscript when I was 11. It was a sort of Tolkien kind of Remedy Feist
Yeah.
inspired.
That doesn't
fantasy
surprise
novel.
me because it looks like you're really into world building and like creating cultures and creating like whole structures of cultures and like their languages, and it's just amazing what I'm looking at here. It's
That's what it's
crazy.
about. It's creating the backstory. So you create a massive world. You got to create the backstory. You got to create the history for it. So that is represented within the graphics, and you, as you play the game, you uncover the graphics. I had an interesting comment recently, actually, about a guy that, he just didn't get it. He didn't get this style. He didn't. I think he preferred like games like Tomb Raider, which I love too, by the way. I love Tomb Raider, all those games. But he preferred that style, and he just felt like, with these games like Near and Myst and Riven, you have to backtrack a lot. You have to do a lot of backtracking. And I explained to him, I saw his point. It was a valid point. But one of the things you do within a game, like you said, Thomas, culture, is that you learn about the world as you're exploring it.
Yeah.
And so those things you saw at the beginning of the game, they're not going to look the same by the time you finish the game. That You're going to have a whole new perspective on everything, because you learn about the game as you kind of solve puzzles and read journals and all sorts of other things that you do within Nia. And that kind of leads me on to, I guess, what you mentioned before, talking about puzzle design, because foremost is world building and story, and then the puzzles come after. So it's a natural implementation, it's a natural flow of design, and it feels natural when you're playing it. So it's not an arbitrary Rubik's cube. It's it feels like it's part of the world, which Riven did so well. It's like, and I've taken from that and been like, wow, I've got the story, I've got these characters. This is great. This is like, it just seemed like a perfect formula to use, and that's what it's about. I really find my passions lie in that, and I find it very fulfilling.
I mean, it looks like I mean, it looks like you have like basically. I mean, it feels like you got your career set up for you. Like this game is going to sort of set up all of your games, because it looks so well done. It looks so well done. It looks like it reminds me of I would see these kind of games on like physical boxes at Walmart when I was like 10, and I would look through the manual or like the back, and these kind of graphics, it's like identical to that classic game. So I feel like do you feel encouraged? Like, do you feel like you're set for this as being your career for at least the foreseeable future?
Oh, incredibly so. Incredibly so. Nier is a big world with a lot more story to tell than what is in this game. And so, I can see many sequels coming from this game as well. Like, I already have the sequel in concept form, funny enough. It was actually the game it's a long story, but basically before I actually started Nier in 2018, which was July, it's coming to the 4-year cycle of development soon. But before I started Nier, I was developing another game which I called Beyond, and that was around kind of May, June, from what I recall, and it was just concept art. And it was when I was fleshing out the story that I created in 2011, and so that was a big idea in itself. Nier was just going to be a test demo. It was literally going to be a small little environment that I was going to release, a small little thing. It was Blender was fresh. I was like using Blender. I was picking it up very quickly, because you got to understand as well that I've got background in 3D modeling already, so I kind of knew the visual space and visual kind of spacing of things was it was there for me anyway. Just the tool needed to, refine the tool and everything. But yeah, so basically, Nier took on a world of its own, and it became bigger and bigger. And I was like, wow, this game, and Nier just popped out of my head. I think I was in my studio, in Mandurah, Western Australia, and I was like, wow, Nier. Something about it stuck out, and it stuck. That's the name. I love creating place names, creating that kind of stuff, and there's a lot of different place names in the game which you come across. So
I'm a really big fan of that too. That's one of my favorite things, is just coming up with all these different world names.
I find wonderful, and I think that's why I relate to your content so much, is that you have this drive to create world yourself. You know, you focus on the story, you focus on the atmosphere, you
Yeah.
focus on those things. And interestingly enough, because I know that, you know, I'm not where you're at in your career, but it's really interesting to see how, when as you've progressed, you know, all the different sort of challenges you've had to face, but the growth that you've had as well. And I find that, you know, interesting because everyone's on their different journeys,
Yeah.
and how you create a business and how then the mind, I mean, that's kind of one thing with taking on a publisher. It does change.
Oh
It
yeah.
does change. You're funded. You are paid to make a game now. You are, you know, it's I have the great thing about me and you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you had creative control over
Oh
your
yeah.
first project.
And it's funny because like most publishers, they're gonna grant that if you ask for it. Like they're, I honestly I think publishers are really hungry right now. I think they're. It sounds weird, but I don't think there's enough content out there.
Interesting.
I think
Yeah.
publishers are super hungry. So if you say, hey, I want creative control and I want flexibility on the schedule, and maybe you increase the number by an additional 20 grand or something. I don't know, or maybe more,
Right.
maybe 100 grand more than what you were thinking. They'll
Yeah.
probably say yes if your game's good because they're hungry. They're hungry for content. But you're totally right. Like it changes the moment you sign a contract. It changes your whole mentality. You're like, okay, now the clock is ticking, and now it becomes a product. It started as a passion project, now it becomes a product, and that's a good
Exactly.
thing, you know.
It is. It sets yourself, like I said, those milestones of just being able to get the project done. And, you know, if I've got other games to make, then I need to make those as well. I want to make those, and they'll be their own journeys. They'll have their own journeys. And interestingly enough, because Near is like nearly coming up to its 4 year dev cycle, like it's the fourth, you know, year anniversary for Near coming up. It's like a time capsule. The way I see it is that, you know, when you create a game that takes so long, and you take on such a big project by yourself, it becomes a time capsule of your life.
Yeah,
You know, the person you were at the beginning is a completely different person to who you're going to be at the end. So that's the benefit, one of the benefits of taking on a big game. And I guess, you know, people who want to take those small projects on to build their confidence and build their, you know, just build themselves up as a game developer. That's a very short, clever thing to do. Um, for me, it's a different journey. I feel my journey is taking me on this path. It'll, you know, succeed, it will fail, but whatever the case may be, you know, this is the journey I'm on. And so far, it's been really good. It's
yeah,
been a really good journey. It's, you know, it's given me many opportunities, to be able to have a publisher contact me and sign in the contract, going full time. Also, being able to talk to the original developers of Myst and Riven as well.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, just being able to chat to them and being able to kind of like, you know, pick their brains and just being like, finding out more about what their process
Yeah,
was. It builds, you know, your confidence. I mean, I have a list of things here, and this is something that we maybe would apply maybe to your audience as well to boost their own confidence as they develop games. Being able to create a list of all the achievements you have. I'm all about lists. I love lists. I love
yeah,
to do notes. I'm all about writing things down. You know, I have things here that you can see of like James Cameron, quotes from James Cameron, Lucas, and all these people that have been successful in what they do, but the things that have made them successful, you know. So that's
yeah,
quite an important thing, I think. If you're very visual as well, that really helps. You're able to draw upon that, and it gives you power.
yeah.
It empowers you, and I think that's something,
I'm the same
you
way.
know.
I'm the
And
same way.
well,
I love printing out stuff, putting lists on my wall, and ultimately just sort of creating
cool.
a story of what you've achieved and where you're going. I'm a big fan of sort of creating and telling my own story, and
Mm,
sort of using that to visualize where we're going and where the studio is going. But man, like
yeah,
this is so. I'm really looking forward to this game. Like this looks so good. You should be super proud of what you've achieved. We're
thanks,
at
Thomas.
about an hour here, I think. So is there anything else that you wanted to leave with the audience before we wrap up here?
Well, I would just say follow your dream, follow what your goal is, what your passion is, what you feel is deep within you that you want to explore and develop, and follow that, because you'll succeed in what you really love to do, whatever that success is. And so that's the advice I can give to people who are watching this. And as opposed to maybe making a small game, taking on a long big project as well can open up opportunities to you,
for sure. Even if it flops.
So
even if it flops, it can still open up opportunities.
There was something you said in one of your videos, Thomas, where if you're presented a brick at the end of it, are you going to be happy with that? Are you going to be happy with the outcome of that? Well, have you enjoyed the process? Have you learned things? Have you developed? Then you've succeeded already. And I feel like, I was speaking to my wife about this as well. Like, she says, you've made it already. You've made it, in the sense that you're doing this full time. This is your job now. I was a carer before I became full time. So I was, caring for the elderly, and that was a rewarding job in itself. But I'm able to do this full time now and put all my energy into it. And if you're able to create a long game, then that can also show a publisher that you are determined. I had the Steam page set up as well, so that's another thing. You're determined, you have a drive, you have a vision, and you have something there. They'll look into that.
Yeah. And
they'll, see if it will work for them. And, at the
end of the day, it's one step closer. And most people, unfortunately, they're not interested in getting one step closer to, what you said, your dream, whatever that is. The reason most people, I think, aren't interested in making that step closer to their dream is because it's just really, really scary. It is a scary thing. I lay awake at night still to this day, despite, we have money in the bank, we're doing great, life is good, the studio is going great, and I still lay awake at night with insecurity, confusion, not really knowing what the future looks like. So I'm still scared. I'm still confused. The difference between me and a lot of people who don't do what I do, who wish they could, the difference is, I was willing to take that step, even though it was scary,
Yes, you have to take that step. You have to have, it comes down to that inner passion to see something come to fruition, to make it real.
Yeah.
And that really helps. That definitely helps. And one thing I'd like to leave on as well, Thomas, is when I first found out about your channel, it was actually in Australia. I vividly remember this. I was with my wife and her kids, and we were in this car park, and they went into the shops. It was this open top car park right at the top. And I was sort of at the car, and I turned on my phone. I was looking on YouTube, and I saw one of your videos come up. And I just remember watching it, thinking, wow, actually, it was one of your it was 2000, and it would have been 2018 around the time.
Yeah, that's a long time ago.
Yeah, and you were at a different point in your journey.
Yep.
And I remember then watching another video down the track whilst I've been developing Neara, and you were having a chat with David, and you created the Last Fox.
Yeah. What's that game? I always forget the name. It's The First Tree.
The First Tree.
Yeah, but it is about a fox. Correct.
Yes. Yeah, The First Tree, and and I was like, wait a sec, that's Thomas Brush, and you've changed like so much in that space of time.
Oh yeah.
I didn't even recognize who you were.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. You should change. People should be changing. If here's a really fun question. This is more of just a philosophical one. But if you look back on yourself 3 years ago and you're not cringing, then you're probably not doing this right. You should be looking back going, man, I was an idiot, because that means you've grown, and that means that you've gotten a little bit smarter, and that's especially true with game dev. How I make games now is totally different than how I make games 3 years ago. In particular, relating to schedules and budgets and team management and ideation and game design documents. So everyone needs to realize change is good. Cringing at yourself is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's self-development. It's the best thing you can do for yourself. Being self-aware as well, becoming self-aware of things that you can change, and even your own faults, and just being able to admit them to yourself, and being able to kind of work on them. And I have to say, my wife has helped so much with that.
Oh, me too.
And it's been, that's what it's about too. Those relationships you have and friendships you have, being able to grow together and helping each other grow.
Yeah.
And what you're doing, Thomas, as well with this channel, I have to say, you're doing a wonderful thing. You're enabling people to grow and to follow their passions and their dreams and what they, in game dev.
Yeah.
And even if it's not game dev, it might be something else they'll pursue, but they've taken something away from your videos and they're using it in something else. They're using
I appreciate
it.
that. Man, Aaron, that means a lot to me, man. I appreciate it. And it's fun. It's fun being able to, essentially talk to my subscribers on this podcast. It's so cool how many of my subscribers like you are full-time game developers. So to wrap things up here, just want to say congratulations on being a full-time game dev. It's incredible.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for joining. And guys, just remember, click the link below, support Aaron. This is somebody who needs support because not that you need financial support, you got a publisher, but you need support because you deserve it. This game looks incredible. I'm really impressed by what you've done.
Thank you so much. Definitely wishlist Neara on Steam, and I'm updating the Steam page at least once a week. So there's always updates going on over there, and I've also got a few Facebook, Twitter, and so definitely follow TikTok as well, which I've started recently. So it's another angle on the game development, which is quite fun to play with.
Yeah.
So definitely follow Neara's progress on there as well.
All right, Aaron, I'm going to run an outro here. I appreciate your time, and I'll see you on Discord after this podcast, and we can chat a little bit.
Awesome. Sounds
all right,
good.
man. Take it easy.
Bye.
Get over here. Get down. Hey, thanks for watching. By the way, if you haven't downloaded that free 2D game kit below, click below. It's my treat to you. I used this game kit to make a game for PewDiePie in 14 days, and I actually got to play it with him in front of his audience, which was really cool. This game kit is totally free. It's my treat to you, and you can use it however you want. You can make a commercial game and make $1 million off this game kit. I don't care. Or you could just use it for a hobby project. It's my treat to you. And by the way, if you haven't clicked like, that would mean a ton to me. Hit subscribe. And also, this is important, hit that notification bell. Here's why. If you get notified of when I'm live, you can watch me make my next game, and let me know in the chat what you think about the game or any ideas you have, and you might just show up. Your chat might just show up in the next video that I upload. All right. I'll talk to you later. Bye.